What's going on, everybody? FrenchFit here, back with another video. Wanted to talk about mobility today, specifically mobility tools, foam rollers, lacrosse balls, stuff like that, different modalities that you can use to get yourself more mobile, a little bit more loose, hopefully reduce some soreness after a tough workout. So over the years, being the fitness junkie that I am, I have accrued quite a few foam rollers, mobility tools of all sorts. Not that I use all of them on a regular basis, but I just kind of like to try different brands out, experiment, see which ones I like, see which ones I think work better. Some of them are pretty expensive, some of them are more on the cheaper side, but I'm going to go through every single one of them that I own and kind of talk about what I use them for, if I do use them on a consistent basis, and what my recommendations are at the end of this video. Also going to be putting price points on all these at the top of the screen so you guys can check out some of the prices and as well as the brands. Hopefully I can help you guys out, save you guys some money. So let's just get started, get right into it. So we'll start with the foam rollers that I have. So this right here is a rumble roller. Now, if you follow me on Instagram, I went over these. These are my favorite foam rollers currently to use. I started using these about, I'd say a little over a year ago. When I really wanted to make mobility more of a priority within my fitness game. I like these because obviously you can see they have teeth, so to say. So this, as you see, this one's kind of like a darkish blue color. This is just their regular one. Again, they come in various lengths. I also have like a travel sized one too, but this is probably their medium length. So is this one, it's decently soft, as you can see. So it has a little bit of give to it. This was a really good one for me when I started out because I wasn't used to a foam roller like this, because there's really not a lot of them out there like this. Nothing that really compares exactly to this one from what I found. These are going to run you a little bit more expensive. I think this was definitely, I want to say it was over $50 for sure, but it's been well worth the money. And then after I used this one for a few months, probably 2 or 3 months, then I ordered their extra firm one. You see this one's black, has a lot less give to it in the teeth. Really good for really anywhere where you have like a trigger point or like a knot. I've noticed like in my upper back, this is really good for rolling out my shoulders, upper back, or really anywhere where I just have a tight spot that like a normal flat foam roller can't really get to. So yeah, I usually, when I try to roll out most days, I'll have just like a 10 to 15 minute rollout session. I'll usually start with one of these. This is usually my go-to #1 mobility tool. So rumble roller, check them out. They have a couple other tools that I'm going to get to here in a few minutes, but as I said, they have the regular and then the extra firm. I believe they also have a third option now. I think it's called the Gator. It has like less pronounced teeth on it, just kind of has more of like a ridge if you even wanted to ease into it a little bit more. So rumble roller, good stuff. So the other foam roller that I've been using recently that's kind of been growing on me, this is from a company that I discovered at like a fitness convention that I went to in Dallas, Texas actually. I was lucky enough to get that trip paid for by the school I go to, and this is a company called RAD Mobility, and this is called the Axle. I don't know if you can read that there, but it says RAD, that's the name of the company, and this is called the Axle. So it's their foam roller, and when I first went up to their stand, I was like, oh, it's just another mobility company making the same old tools. But then I kind of asked a few questions, and I was actually really impressed with like the design, how they made them, and kind of the versatility of all their tools. So this one, I like this because it's firm enough. You don't want something that's super soft unless you're like super tight or sore or you're new to rolling out. I like something with decent firmness, so this is pretty good. As you can see, it also has a very like slight indent here, and the reason they made it that way is because it contours to your body. When you're rolling over your spine, you obviously have muscles on each side of your spine, but you don't really want to have a lot of pressure on your spinal column, like on that exact point. So I really like that. As we'll get to later in the video, this actually has a hole in it because it can, we'll get to that later in the video. It's another piece of equipment that can go through here and just gives it a lot more versatility. So I like this one. I also like it a little bit more for if I'm rolling like my low back. As you can see, this one has a little bit more, it's a little bit more wide than the rumble roller, so I can elevate my low back off the ground a little bit more and kind of just get a better stretch. So that's the RAD Mobility Axle. This is their foam roller. I can't remember how much I paid for this because I paid for it in like a pack with a bunch of their tools, but I'll find the price and put it up at the top of the screen. So RAD Mobility axle right there. And speaking of RAD Mobility, I'm just going to go through all their tools right here. So this is called the Helix. This was, I think, when I went to their booth at the convention, this was probably my favorite tool that I tried out, because it was just, I don't know, a little bit different than what I'd seen. Again, it also has the hole, as we'll get to here in a little bit, but obviously it has that contour, so it's not putting a lot of pressure on your spinal column specifically, just getting the, either side where the muscles are. And I really like rolling out my upper back with this, as well as even like my calves, or like lay down on it on my quads. Really good stuff. It's decently soft. So it's not super aggressive. So if you're looking for something that's not going to be super painful to begin with, would definitely recommend this. Now, to get to why there's a cylinder hole through the middle of both these mobility tools. So there's this thing that I got. This is called the RAD rod. So you've probably seen a lot of these types of rollers. I think I mostly see it with people that like run track. They'll roll their legs out, mostly their quads. It's a really good. I like this one a little bit better though, because I've had those and they're usually made of like a kind of like a dinky plastic, which will do the job. But like the big thing about these is they're super sturdy. This thing is pretty solid. There's like a little foam outlining on it, but then it gets pretty solid, so you can really dig into that tissue. And this is where the hole comes in handy. So you can basically put the RAD rod through either one of these previous tools that I just showed you. And though I don't have a ton of, I feel like this would be better if you had like a partner, like if you were laying on your stomach and they could just kind of like roll this thing on your back and put a good amount of pressure into that. That just gives it a little bit more versatility. I definitely haven't used it with the axle, but I've used it a couple times with the Helix. I'll just put it through there and kind of roll out my quad, see how it feels. To be honest with you, I'd rather just use the rod itself, just because I can get deeper into those muscles, because this thing's pretty solid. They also sell like a rod mini too, if you want something that's a little bit shorter. It definitely is not long enough to go through the whole thing of this though, so it's more of like a portable type of this RAD rod thing. So there we go. And keeping along the lines of RAD mobility, let's see. So this is kind of an interesting tool, new concept that I hadn't really seen as far as mobility tools go, and I've seen quite a few of them throughout my years. So this is called the Center. And as you see, it has an inflation hole here. So this is actually like an inflatable ball, kind of like one of those balls where you'd play a mini hoop with, like Nerf basketball with, but it's for mobility. So as you can see, you can kind of, if I wanted to pump a little bit more air into it and have it be a little bit more firm, I could do that. But the thing is, so I have another ball that I'm going to show you in here in just a second that's a lot more firm. This I like for if anybody's ever heard of like gut smashing. So I literally just lay on my stomach, put this thing in my gut, and kind of just let it, loosen up the muscles in my stomach. I went to one of their like workshops, and the whole thing was kind of based on how like our organs are connected to like the whole body. I know that's not really making much sense. It was a lot better. It was a very smart person that said it, much smarter than me. But it just made sense at the time. And I was like, you know what? I don't know if I'm going to use this thing a whole lot, but it's definitely, I think it's good to give it a try. I haven't used this a whole lot, so I'll probably have a better verdict on it in a little while. But definitely an interesting tool. So this is the RAD mobility. It's called the Center. So there's that. And keep along the lines. You guys probably think I'm like sponsored by RAD mobility with all these tools, but I was just so impressed by that booth at that conference that I was like, you know what? Let me get a little sampler pack. So this, most people probably are familiar with like what most people would call like a peanut, or just like two baseballs or two lacrosse balls, two tennis balls, and a lot of people just tape them together to make a peanut. That's like the really cheap way to do it. But I went and bought this more expensive version. So what I like about this is the theme with a lot of their tools is they pay attention to even like, as I said, like how it contours to the body, as well as the density of the tools. So this it's not super soft, but it's also not super firm. So I like it because I think a lot of times, take this peanut for example, this is kind of just made of like almost a hard plastic. I just got this one off Amazon, I'm pretty sure. And while it might be good for someone who's like experienced at foam rolling and wants that really aggressive feel, so to say, I think a lot of people's like upper back and shoulders, which is most of the time where people are using a peanut, that's really tense and really tight, and this can be a little bit overload, and then people just say, screw it, I'm not going to do it at all. So this would be a really good alternative. Also I've tried it like on my calf a little bit. It's always kind of tricky with these smaller tools when you're like close to the ground, because you want to get enough space between the limb that you're rolling out and the floor to get a good, to actually get in there. But definitely also another option with that. So this is, I don't even know what they call this one. They have like weird names for all their tools, but I would just call this one a peanut. This one's pretty much the same. You can get these for pretty cheap on Amazon, but I have one more. Actually, I'm gonna go through the rest of the RAD mobility tools, so I can just get those out of the way. So the last two we got here. So most people are probably familiar with your like traditional lacrosse ball. I'm a huge fan of just like the regular lacrosse ball, to be honest with you, but I like this one because I'm not sure what they call this one either, but I think they might call it like a round or something, which would make sense. It's round. It's a lot more squishy than like a regular lacrosse ball. You see, I have a regular lacrosse ball here, not a lot of give to that. This one has a decent amount of give, because I really like these. Honestly, like if I'm gonna roll out my foot, this is kind of my go-to, the traditional lacrosse ball. But another thing that I like to use like a ball for is I like to put it like on part of my trap or like my upper back, shoulder, and sometimes this can just be a little bit too much. So this was a really good option for that. Another couple places that I like to use it is rotator cuff, and kind of just pin that down on the ground and kind of just work internal, external rotation. Doing that with one of these, a little bit more firm, pretty brutal. This is just about right. This one's just about right, so I really like it for that. Another one I really like it for is when I'm rolling out my TFL. So your TFL sits like right above your T-band, IT band, right in that hip pocket, and my TFLs are super tight. So rolling them out with these is pretty brutal, so I like this one. It's a little bit softer. I can just kind of sit there, breathe through it. So I really like these for those few spots. And as I said, traditional lacrosse ball, this is going to be a really good option for a lot of people because it's going to be available at you can probably just get it at like your local Walmart. They're pretty cheap. Again, I roll out my feet pretty much every day, and I use either a lacrosse ball or just even like a regular baseball. A baseball is probably going to be the most extreme out of all of them because it's going to be the most firm, but really like the lacrosse ball for this. As I said earlier, you can use your trap, rotator cuff, really anywhere, but this is going to be a little bit more firm than this one, which is why I like having both of these options. And the last of the RAD mobility tools that I have are, I believe these are called mini rounds. Now these are just super tiny, just like a mini version of a lacrosse ball. As you can see, it's very small. So they're small because they're meant to go in tough to reach places, stuff that it's really tough to jam a foam roller or a lacrosse ball or something like that. So the one the guy showed me at that booth was right under your collarbone in your subclavius muscle. So if you want to get under there and just kind of rotate back and forth, you can even get a little bit of torque if you want to twist it. Another area that I think these are good for is if you're just super tense and your jaw is tense, kind of just putting it on your jawline and opening up, just working that to relieve some of that tension in your jaw. Another thing I like about these tools is the texture on these, especially this one, is a little bit sticky. So if you want to get some torque or rotation, it's not just going to slip off your skin. So if you see here, I rotate that. I don't know if you can see that very well, but the skin is moving with it. It's not just sliding around doing nothing. So that's another thing that it's just the little details with this company that I think are really fascinating. I think they have a lot of potential. So I think you're going to be hearing a lot more of them once they get more popular, because I believe they're a fairly new company. So these are the mini rounds. Haven't used these a whole lot. These are I would say a little less versatile. This is kind of just like a cherry on top if you're looking to really expand your mobility tool collection, like if you're a fitness nerd like me. So there we have it. And so as I showed you guys earlier, we have the rumble rollers. Now kind of going back to that family. These are made by the same company. I believe they call these Beastie Balls, if I'm remembering right. So basically, it's just kind of like a spiky ball, kind of the same concept as like a lacrosse ball, except for obviously you're going to be able to trigger point those areas, kind of like with their foam rollers. They have the teeth. So the white one is like the much softer one, has a lot more give, and then this one's pretty hardcore. It's pretty much has no give. So I find myself using this like if my chest is pretty tight, because I can just get in there, lay on the floor or just up against a wall and get that area in between like my pec and my shoulder. Haven't really used it in a whole lot of other places. I'd be interested to see how it felt like on the back of my trap. Again, these are pretty aggressive, if I'm being honest with you, so you definitely want to ease into it. I would say start with like just a traditional lacrosse ball or something like that, and then work your way into these. So the last tool that I have from the rumble roller family is, I'm not really sure what they call this, but it's 2 Beastie Balls and it's on basically like a stick. So there's these little platforms that you can attach and detach. You know, you can use this as like a roller to roll out your legs. The reason I really like this, and if you're wondering, they also sell them with the softer Beastie Balls, like the white ones, which honestly might be better for me because this thing is like super, it's pretty painful, but it does definitely get the knots out. So I really like this for rolling out my calves. So I'll just set this on the floor and just roll my calves under it, my Achilles. That's what I really like this for. It's a very specific use, so not as much like versatility as like one of these bad boys. This is like my go-to for like if I need anything. But if I want to roll out like my calves, Achilles, or even if my upper back is super tight, I'll try to roll up and down my back. But again, this is super aggressive, as these like yellow ones have virtually no give to them. So interesting tool nonetheless though. So moving on, this is probably the most like worthless tool in my collection. I can't remember the last time I've used this. It's honestly been years. You see these, you know, most people have probably seen these. It's just like a plastic ball in like a roller thing. You can kind of just roll it around like that. I feel like this would be good for, you know, if you worked at just like a desk job all day and just needed something that, you know, you could be at your computer, you're taking your sales calls. Oh, my chest is tight. I don't know. Like, I honestly might give this one away or throw it away because I'd hardly use it at all. So, wouldn't recommend for me. But I mean, some people definitely. I mean, obviously they're still selling these, so there definitely is a market for them. Getting down. Wow, we're down to the last 2. So, now we're down to these 2. So these are both from the same company. They're from the company Mobility WOD. But they're manufactured by Rogue, I believe. I know this one's definitely manufactured by Rogue. So if you've never heard of Mobility WOD, it's the guy that owns it, started it. His name is Kelly Starrett. He's a physical therapist. He's super well known in like really the fitness game, physical therapy. He's written a couple really good books. Becoming a Supple Leopard is kind of his, you know, most famous book. It's all about mobility, flexibility, stuff like that, using like foam rollers, stretching to help improve your fitness game. So this one is called the Gemini. Now obviously it's similar to like your traditional peanut, but it has a few key differences. So obviously it has a good ridge in there, so you're not rolling on your spinal column, so that's good. The thing I like the best about it is the ends are pointy, so it makes it a little bit more versatile because you can dig into like, the thing I use this most for is like digging into like my upper chest or like where my shoulder, I'll get against like a wall or something sturdy and just kind of try to dig in there into those tough to reach places, like I do with like the rounds, like the mini rounds, get in underneath like my clavicle, those tough to reach spots. Or you can just like jam this into like your quad if you have like a trigger point that you're looking to work, and just kind of twist and push it in there. So these do run pretty expensive. I want to say both these were around $50 each, which if you feel them, like they're like super solid. So I have no doubt that they're gonna last a really long time. But you know, I'm the type of person that doesn't have like a very big problem paying for stuff like this, paying good money, but definitely on the pricier side. So the last one we got here, this is called the Supernova. So basically, I would say this is about the size of a softball, maybe a little bit bigger, maybe a little bit smaller. I don't know. You asked me why don't I just get a softball? Well, I don't know, because this is made specifically for mobility. As you see, it kind of has all these little like ridges and bumps. Not really sure what that does, if that does like a whole lot. Again, sort of kind of the same concept as this. But I really like this for, what I've really used it the most for is like my quads, like specifically my VMO and my adductors. So like my inner thigh and just my inner leg muscles in general. I'll lay on the floor and just kind of smash those out. Also have used it for my glutes. I'll kind of just try to basically sit on it, so to say, at an angle. But yeah, this is like super dense too, so I have no doubt this is going to last a really long time. Again, I believe this was around $50, so a little bit more pricey, but I'm definitely a fan of these. And he definitely has a few more tools too that, you know, I think one of them is kind of similar to what this is. But yeah, good stuff. So all these mobility tools, all this money spent, all this, you know, comparing, what's the best? Well, I will tell you flat out that you don't need any of this stuff to be healthy, to be in good physical shape, to, you know, I definitely think there is some benefit though, especially if, you know, you're an athlete, if you're someone that has a pretty strenuous exercise routine and you find yourself tight and sore, and maybe you're doing a good amount of like stretching or yoga or whatever you're doing and it's helping, but you maybe want to try something else to get that extra edge, I would definitely recommend that you get at least a couple of these. Now, do you need all of these or even like half these? Hell no. I've spent the money for you, so you don't have to buy all of this shit. I'll tell you what's good and what's not, or what I think is good and what's not. I would say definitely for everybody you should get some type of foam roller. Now, does it have to be a rumble roller? Does it have to be the RAD roller? No, definitely not. But I would say get some kind of foam roller, even if it's just like, you know, it could be just like a cylinder PVC pipe to start with. I know that some people use those, just your traditional foam roller that could be flat. I'm a big fan of these because they're just, you know, more advanced, but definitely would recommend having a foam roller that you can, you know, carry around with you. You know, they make ones that are like half the size, that are easy to stick in a gym bag. Because I mean, a lot of gyms are going to have foam rollers nowadays, but you can't always guarantee that some other person's not going to be using it. So I think it's always good to have your own. Other than that, I would say a lacrosse ball or a baseball or something like that is another thing that comes in pretty handy. It's pretty versatile. Again, like I said, I roll my feet out pretty much every day with one of these, and kind of just upper back, shoulders, rotator cuff, pretty much anywhere on the body. These are probably going to be your most versatile, in my opinion. You could just have these two and really be good to go, honestly. Like, if I'm going to go my top two, it's going to be a foam roller and some sort of ball. After that, you know, it's kind of really up to you. It depends on what areas you're struggling with. I would say if your upper back and shoulders are giving you problems, maybe, you know, a lot of people, myself included, definitely spend too much time hunched over in this position, you know, looking at your phone, computer, whatever. I would recommend getting some sort of peanut, or really, you can just buy 2 lacrosse balls, 2 baseballs, tape them together, and voila, you have a much cheaper version of one of these. So that would be another kind of bonus option, I would say. I think another one that a lot of people may get benefit from is something like this, especially if, you know, I don't think this has a ton of versatility besides your legs, because it's tough. I mean, I can't really roll out my lats by myself. That's better to be done on like a foam roller because I can lay on the floor. But like if you have tight quads, this thing is really good. The RAD rod specifically, I just think it's a lot better than any of the other ones that are, you know, made of plastic, because, you know, it's super sturdy. You can really press into that tissue. Another place I like to use it is actually the back of my neck. Oddly enough, it just really gets those knots up towards my skull. If you have a friend, they can definitely get your hamstrings or your calves for you. But this doesn't have a ton of like versatility as far as I'm concerned, especially when you don't have a partner there. Other than that, it's kind of just up to you. I thought about including my massage gun in this video, but honestly, I know a lot of people are a fan of those. I've owned one for a couple of years. I've actually owned a couple of them, and I hardly ever use it, to be honest with you. It's not, the one I have isn't super portable. It's in a big, like, bulky case. It's easier to just grab one of these, and get going. And I don't think a lot of people use those the way they're intended to be used anyway. Some people are kind of just like mindlessly, they're giving themselves like a massage, like it's just tickling you at that point. Like, they're meant to be, you find a trigger point and you press really hard, and it's pretty painful when you use them the correct way. So I didn't include that for that reason. Plus, these are a lot more cheap than that. So I hope this video was helpful. I know I kind of threw a lot at you in a little bit of time, went through all these tools, but I know I spent all this money and experienced all these different tools to hopefully save you some money and some time, to let you know that you don't need all these fancy tools, but I do think there's going to be always a couple staples that are going to be helpful for most people. So if you enjoyed the video, give it a like, subscribe for more, and we'll see you next time. Peace.